In this video, I'm not only going to show you why I think the Pergear 25mm f1.8 is a must-have lens, I'm also going to show you how you can get your hands on one with a prize giveaway. First, the basic specs. This is not a full-frame lens. It's available in either APS-C for Sony E-mount or Fuji X-mount, which gives you an equivalent field of view of about 37.5mm, or it's available for Micro 4/3, which would give you the equivalent of around 50mm. So it's that kind of mid-range focal length that's good for street photography. Now, it's a fully manual lens, manual focus, manual aperture, no electronic contacts on the back. So it's a pretty bare bones, basic kind of lens. But along with the basic feature set, it also has a basic price tag of only $68. But don't let the cheap price tag and the small size fool you. This is not some little plastic toy. It weighs close to 200 grams and is entirely made out of metal. Plus there's some other little neat features that are hiding in here as well. First off, there's the aperture mechanism on this. It's a 12-bladed rounded aperture, which is quite insane for a budget lens. Usually that's something found in more higher end lenses. And then there's the aperture ring. Yes, it's a manual aperture ring, but it's completely declicked, which again is very unusual for low-end stills lenses. This is a feature generally found more in higher end cine lenses. So that alone could make this lens a very good option for a hobbyist video shooter that wants a declicked lens without wanting to spend a fortune. And then just in front of the aperture ring, you have the manual focus ring. Now, when you turn the manual focus ring towards this lens's minimum focus of 20 centimeters, the front of the lens barrel does extend out, but it doesn't rotate as you do that. So that means you're still okay to use things like polarizing filters. Now, although the aperture ring and focus ring are relatively close to each other, one thing I do like is that they have completely different feels to them. The aperture ring is consistent small groove teeth all the way around, whereas the focus ring is small clumps of grooved teeth separated by completely clean metal. So without even looking at the lens, it's very obvious just to the touch which one you're actually turning. So you're unlikely to turn the wrong one by mistake, and you don't need to take your eye away from the viewfinder to double check. Now at this point you might be under the impression that this is just the 7 Artisan's 25mm lens with a different badge on it. But that's not actually the case. This is a completely different lens. This is made up of only 5 glass elements in 3 groups, whereas the 7 Artisan's is 7 elements in 5 groups. This has a 43mm filter thread versus the 46 of the 7 Artisan's. And while this costs only $68, the 7 Artisan's cost $80. Well, now you might be questioning, what's the image quality like? And a valid question it is. At f1.8, the centre of the frame is only reasonably sharp, with the corners being a lot softer. The whole frame lacks contrast, and there is a slight amount of vignetting as well. Now, as you stop the lens down to about f2.8, the frame does get gradually sharper and the vignetting does start to clear. It reaches peak sharpness around f5.6, and at that point, the centre of the frame is quite sharp, the corners are acceptable but not brilliant, and then as you stop down further, you do start to get some softening from diffraction. The strangest thing I noticed, however, is when you get down to f16, you get a very strange onion blur in the middle of the image. It's only at f16 and it's only in the centre of the frame. It's just very, very strange. On the topic of the aperture as well, the only real negative I have about this lens is it's kind of difficult to know exactly what aperture you're shooting at. The markings aren't the clearest. But now, why is this the must-have lens? For me, it's a must-have lens because, well, one, it's dirt cheap. It's one of the cheapest lenses arguably on the market. For the fact that you've got a mechanical focus, not a fly-by-wire that you find on most mirrorless lenses these days, and the declicked aperture ring does make this brilliant for video shooters. I think people these days, myself included, have become guilty of relying too much on autofocus doing the job for us, on electronic apertures doing the job for us, that we forget old school photography used to be doing everything yourself, and there are still times where you can't trust and rely on autofocus to get the shot that you're after. You have to do it manually. Now that's not too bad if you've got a static subject, you can take that little bit of time. But when I first got this lens and was starting to practice trying to manually focus on moving subjects, I found it really difficult. But having spent some time using this lens and practicing on that more and more, I'm not brilliant, but I'm certainly better than I was. And that for me is why this, I think, is a must-have lens. Yes, the image quality doesn't rival flagship level lenses, but it's not the worst that I've ever seen, and it does have a bit of its own character to it. It's a brilliant little fun lens to use, and I think anyone who's just getting into photography now should definitely consider picking one of these up, provided you have a compatible camera mount, because not only is it good practice, it's really good fun as well. Now, how'd you get your hands on one? Well, Pergear were kind enough to not only send me one to review and try out, but they've sent me another copy to give away to one of you guys. Now, unfortunately for some people, this is a Sony E-mount version. It's not a Fuji or a Micro Four Thirds. But if you do have a Sony E-mount camera and you'd like to be in with a chance of winning this lens, there's only two things you need to do. Number one, make sure you've hit the subscribe button. Number two, leave me a comment down below telling me what you would shoot with this lens first. I'm going to give you guys about a month to get your entries in, and then I'll be picking a winner at random after that, and then hopefully I'll get this straight out to you. And as an extra bonus, I'll be giving away this particular one to one of my Patreon backers, so if you haven't already signed up to my Patreon account, please consider doing so at the link down below. And there's also a link down there to this particular lens on Pergear's website if you want to go and purchase it directly from them. But as always guys, if you have any questions or queries, the comment box is down below while you're down there. Especially make sure you've already hit that subscribe button. And as always guys, hopefully I will see you in the next video.